Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to another episode of eDiscovery After Hours. My guest this week is Helen Geib from Hoover Hull Turner right here in Indianapolis, Indiana. This is a great episode. Helen was kind of the first friend in legal that I made outside of the four walls of my office. We had coffee sitting outside probably May of 2020. As I was just getting my feet wet. And so it was really fun to connect with her in this setting. We talked about her kind of track record as an amateur mixologist, her taste of foreign films and the different phases of movies fandom that she goes through. And then we also talked about how she's been in big law, small law, and spent a decade on the vendor side. And so we talked about kind of some of what are the comparing and contrasting elements of those situations. It was a great conversation. I know you're going to love it. The sponsor this week, as always, is Discovery Master. When you are tracking document review projects in Relativity, instead of manually running or asking for updated project metrics like doc reviewed count and document speed and QC stats and key issue tags and subsets of data, all of these things that take multiple relativity certs to figure out how to do. Hey, instead of spending time doing that or asking others to spend time doing that, just log in to www.discoverymaster.co and see how all of that can be automated and placed right at your fingertips. Thanks for tuning in.
Quick time!
You don't know how to drink, your whole generation.
Drinks on the house.
Yes, sir.
No, wait a second. Drinks are 50% off.
Right.
No, wait a second. Double the price of everything.
And I work only 16 hours a day.
A union man only works 8 hours a day.
I belong to 2 unions.
And now, eDiscovery After Hours with your host, Ryan Short.
Okay. Helen, thanks for coming on eDiscovery After Hours.
Thank you for having
Cheers.
me. Yes, cheers.
This is great. What are we drinking today?
We're drinking a German Riesling, which you purchased, but it is from Germany, so I approve.
Yeah, well, it had to be. So
it has an excellent label.
So you are a good sport because, I have had people on this podcast from Australia, Europe, the Middle East, Canada, all parts of North America. And so it's always on Zoom. And I did one episode in Chicago. And then yesterday we got together at a cocktail bar.
Which was very lovely.
The bar was great. The view was great. The drinks, everything was great, except the lack of technology. Yeah. So this is actually take 2. Yes. And I appreciate that. So you're a good sport. Yesterday we were drinking, is it Negroni? Am I saying that right?
Yes, we had Negronis, which were very good.
Yeah. So now, and you are qualified to say that they're good because you told me that you're an amateur mixologist.
It's true. It's one of my hobbies. The other is watching movies. They go together well.
They do.
Yes, they pair.
How did you get into mixology? What was the gateway drug?
It's my parents went to Paris. And this is relevant because they came home and my mom said, I had this wonderful drink called a Kir. Yeah. And I think you might like it. It's white wine, white Burgundy with a little creme de cassis. And it's like, I was wanting to branch out and have something more exciting than just a glass of white wine when I went out, to work event. So I tried ordering one and it was really good. And it all just went from there.
And prior to this, you were just,
once in a while I drank a glass of wine, that was about it. But yeah. And now many years later, 15 years later, it's now kind of my hobby to make cocktails. I have an extensive home bar that I have acquired over, gradually one bottle at a time.
Yeah. Now, so one of the things that I've figured out through this show, because I always, kind of one of the hooks, right, is that the as you don't get the questions ahead of time. It's like the guest chooses the drink, the host chooses the question. So like if people want to have like a White Russian, I go out and I buy the copper mug, right? Like if we're having a glass of wine and I better find wine glasses at home or run out around the corner. That's not a cheap hobby. I don't know if there's any such thing as a cheap hobby. But
movies are a cheap hobby because I can sit at home and stream for $20 a month with my different services. But even going to the theater isn't bad. But yeah, it's not. But fortunately, I can afford it.
Yeah,
so it's okay.
Yeah. So when you say the other hobby is movies, what kind of movies?
I am a movie omnivore. I like pretty much every kind of movie. And I've been through in my life a series of phases.
Yeah, so that was where I was going to get to.
Yeah, so when I was a teenager, when I was 13, I discovered classic movies on afternoon commercial local television, and I fell in love with this actor named John Garfield.
Okay.
He's not much remembered now, but he was actually a big star in the 40s. And that led me into classic Hollywood movies. And then I became fascinated with Hong Kong movies.
Okay.
And then classic Japanese samurai movies. And then currently I am in a Korean movie phase.
Really?
Yeah. So I still enjoy all the kinds of movies I used to watch in the past, but I have a passion at a time. So my current passion is Korean film.
Oh, funny.
Yeah.
So I assume all subtitles.
Yes.
Like you're not taking Babbel or Rosetta Stone to get into your next phase.
I wish that I had an affinity for languages. I know people who from watching anime have learned to speak Japanese. I have watched, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of Hong Kong movies, and I only know one word in Cantonese, and it's the word for run away. They say that a lot in Korean, in Hong Kong movies.
I took, as most people, or I shouldn't say most, as a lot of people do, I took Spanish in high school, and then I took it in college as well. And I knew enough to get by. Even today, I could survive. I'm not going to be able to debate, science or religion or politics, but I can survive. But when I was right out of school, living in Chicago, not making any money at all, living in a studio apartment, the only entertainment that my budget would allow was going home and turning on Univision, and I would just sit there and I'm like, well, this is going to be what I do. So my Spanish got decent there for a couple of years until I was able to make enough money to go out and afford entertainment. All right, so let's start at the beginning. We are in downtown Indianapolis.
Yes.
This is your hometown.
It is.
Right? Born and raised.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That's right.
And I think you told me that you live 2 doors or 2 blocks from your childhood home.
2 blocks.
2 blocks.
Where my parents still live, so we cannot see each other. I think that this, when we're both home, I think this is very important.
Yeah.
There was a time when the house across the street came on the market, and I said no. But I did move. I bought a house 2 blocks away. So obviously we're close, and we often have dinner together.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
So, okay, and you went to undergraduate where?
A small college in New Jersey. When I was a teenager, I didn't think I wanted to live here.
Yeah.
So I thought, well, I'll go to the East Coast, and then I hated it.
Does any teenager want to live in their hometown?
Maybe some. Maybe.
Yeah.
I they're probably out there.
I haven't met them.
Yeah, but I was not one. However, I hated New Jersey. So I thought, okay, Chicago.
Yeah.
Midwest, but it's Chicago. So I went to law school in Chicago, and I really liked Chicago, but I decided I didn't want to live there.
Really? Why is that? I loved it. I was there for 6 years.
It's so the legal market is very cutthroat.
Yeah.
And I thought, I didn't really want to be a lawyer at a big Chicago law firm that would give me the money that I needed to, to be able to live and actually live in Chicago, which is how it would have been enjoyable.
Right.
And I thought, I don't think I can cut that.
Sure.
So maybe I'll try going back to Indy. And next thing you know, I'm still here.
Yeah. Well, hey, it all's well that ends well.
Yes.
Okay. So when you headed east, to go to this small college in New Jersey that shall remain nameless, evidently. What were you studying?
I was a physics major.
Okay. How the hell did you go from physics to law school?
No, that's a natural. I thought I was going to be a patent lawyer.
Okay.
Yeah. And actually I majored in physics thinking that I would be a patent lawyer. I never thought I would be an engineer or scientist. Yeah. But then, and I got my first job thinking I would be a patent lawyer, and I took the patent bar. But I discovered I was terrible at drafting claims, which is, what goes into a patent. Yeah. So, but I went into patent litigation instead, and I at Barnes and Thornburg, and they welcomed me, and I moved across the hallway, and that went really well. Yeah. I had a really good experience there.
So, if you majored in physics, assuming you were going to be a lawyer, at what age was that the goal?
Well, it was when I started college. I thought, well, physics was interesting. I had enjoyed that in high school, and there wasn't anything else that was really very interesting. So I thought, well, I'll just do that, keep my options open. And, so it just kind of went that way.
Were either of your parents attorneys?
No. No,
Okay.
no attorneys in the family.
Okay. All right. So you're a trailblazer.
Yes.
I like that.
I'm still the only one.
So my father is a
Mhm.
physician.
Mhm.
And so, growing up, attorneys were always evil ambulance chasers. And I was like, Dad, some attorneys defend physicians.
Yes.
And that would always stump him for about 10 seconds. So I was like, it doesn't matter. It's too many. Okay, that's great. So I didn't tell him that I worked for attorneys till like 6 months in when I knew they were going to keep me around. All right. So you alluded to the fact that, you were at Barnes, which is an AmLaw 100 firm headquartered here in town. Great reputation,
Yes.
really good attorneys. And then you were there for a number of years, and then you went to the dark side, the vendor side, right?
I did.
And now you're back at a much smaller firm.
We like to say service provider.
Yeah, service provider, partner.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Consulting partner.
Now that I'm back at a law firm, I call it a vendor again.
Yeah.
But when I was at the service provider, heaven forbid that you called it a vendor.
Well, I have a friend in the industry who has been at a we'll call it vendor for the moment, right? And she was a big law litigator for a number of years, and now she's in house, and she calls them technology partners. I was like, that might be the best semantics yet.
I'm sure they would very much like
they love that. Yes. Too funny. So I think it'd be interesting.
By the way, I love my vendors.
Yeah, don't
I work with really good vendors.
Yes.
Even though I call them vendors and not service providers, they're very dear to my heart.
For the record, good clarification. We'll snip this and put that all over LinkedIn. Yeah. So I think it'd be interesting to hear you kind of compare it and contrast, right? Because there are stereotypes, for better or for worse, about small law firms where you're at and big law where you've been, and service providers, right? Where you spent about a decade, I think.
Yeah.
So, and I think, I don't know, obviously you saw a handful of transactions at your time as a service. So just a really interesting path. You've seen a lot of different facets of where e-discovery and litigation intersect. It's not theoretical for you because you've seen a lot of it. So really kind of an open table, tee up way for you to kind of talk through your experiences here.
So I was at Barnes for 7 years, started as an associate, but found that I liked discovery. That was sort of my career grew up with e-discovery as a field, and within a couple of years, moved into a staff attorney role. That was a good fit for me and for my department, and really had a great experience there. Big law, the firm was not as big when I was there as it is now. They had a lot of mergers after that, but it was still the biggest firm in Indiana, large firm. But my department felt like a small firm. So it was really the best way to be in big law, that I was in a small firm where I had wonderful mentors, wonderful lawyers. It was very exciting to work with them, learn from them. But we had all the support of the big firm around us. And I know I've talked to a lot of people who didn't have a good experience in big law, and there are a lot of structural reasons, why that can be the case. But I have only good memories of my big law experience. But at the same time, I've never been tempted to go back to it, because I know that I was very fortunate to have that dynamic, and that's probably not commonplace to have that. So then when I went to the service provider, I was employed by 3 different companies, although I never changed jobs. First company, little company bought by medium company bought by big company. Yeah. And then I came to my current firm, where I've been for a little over 2 years, which is a sort of small, mid-size firm here in town, litigation focused.
So, and you said something yesterday. I want to come back to that thread. But you said something yesterday that I want to bring up again, because I thought it was so good. And I'm not going to get the phrasing right, so hopefully you will. But something along the effect of, the stereotypes of each of these different players in law, right? It's not that one is inherently a bad place to work because of its structure. It's just a bad place to work. Yeah,
it's true. So there's something about like any profession, there's a grass is always greener temptation that, when you're big law, you want to go in-house. And then when you're in-house, you realize that, maybe that wasn't everything you dreamed it would be, or, it's like, oh, I want to strike out, hang up my own shingle. And then it's like, oh my gosh, I missed that marketing person and that person who ran the conflict checks and, and did the invoices. And now I have to do it all myself. So there's structural advantages and disadvantages to all of those employers and roles, but sometimes it's just a lousy place to work. And it's not because it's big law or small law or a company. It's just not a good place to work. And it's important for anyone to be able to tell when it's not for them because of the type of work it is, and it's not for them because it's just not a good employer.
Yeah. And I think the thing is, right, because over the last 5 to 10 years, there's been this noted shift about culture, right? What's the culture of the firm and or the company or what have you? And culture is not the perks, and it's not the compensation, and it's not the facilities, right? The culture is the unwritten. How do people treat each other? Right. The unwritten kind of codes of conduct. That's not the formal employee handbook, right? And that can be great regardless of the size of the company, or terrible regardless of the size of the company. Yeah. It sounds, and I've generally over my career been fortunate to suss out good places, and it sounds to me like you have too. So I want to get back to that thread where you talk about jumping from Barnes into a service provider and seeing multiple transactions, right? Because this is, I mean, you lived, really essentially, you got a foretaste of what's taken the industry by storm since you left that and went back to the law firm, which is just, M&A just continues to just increase velocity.
Yeah, it was already happening in the last few years that I was on the vendor side, but it's just become even more accelerated since I left. But it's a strange experience. The first time it was pretty smooth because little company bought by medium company. We weren't that different. We had similar cultures and so we were sort of, it's like comparatively there were still a lot of us compared to the company that bought us. But the next time, we were just, we were swallowed up, and it was, people were well-intentioned. It was like, we're going to integrate slowly. We're going to, work on this. We're going to merge the cultures. But, in reality, it was more, well, this is how we do things. And it's time to start doing things that way. And I think that's probably inevitable whenever you have that disparity in the size of the acquirer and the target. So I was coming in my career, I was coming to the end of my time on the provider side anyway. And it sort of personal career development, hit that point where, I wasn't really happy with the culture of the new company. And so I was ready to make the move for a lot of reasons, not just because of that.
I think one of the things that's, I'm starting to see it's getting more press over the last couple of months is what are the advantages or disadvantages of an end-to-end provider, whether that be for services, or for software versus a point solution, right? Best of breed versus one size fits all. And there's an economist that I love who says there are no solutions, only trade-offs, right? So no matter what you say, this will fix the problem. Sure, it'll fix that problem, and it'll create two problems of its own, right? What do you see as now that you are at a law firm and you are working with vendors, both that you've worked with for years and exploring new relationships?
That's right.
How do you think through who can solve all of my problems and check all these boxes versus this is the best fit for X or for Y or for Z, and stitching together your own solution? Right.
So I can imagine a different firm, not mine, where the cases are very predictable and commoditized in a way where there would be a solution that really would be the right solution. And you would get that, and it would serve your needs. And maybe that would be 2 or 3 products, or maybe it would be one, but it's like, based on what we do, this works. But for a large law firm or for a smaller firm like mine that has a wider diversity in cases, we're never going to have that solution. We're always going to need different solutions. And each provider that I have serves a need that I have and doesn't serve other needs that I have. And that's just inevitable because no one is going to be able to have the expertise or the pricing model or the service model to fit every kind of case that I have. Right. It's just not going to happen. And when I look at the law firm, and we customize our approach to all these different cases, it's not like we approach these cases in the same way. So even though, yes, we're one law firm, but we have lawyers with different approaches, and we have staffing, different staffing approaches. And so I need that kind of flexibility from my overall vendor portfolio.
Yeah. I'll have to, we'll go off mic, and then I would drill down into like, how do you push and know that you're not getting marketing fluff, right? But that'll be for another podcast. This one's supposed to be more lighthearted.
Right.
So, all right, when you're off the clock, we know you like drinks, you like movies. Everybody you work from home for, I think, close to 2 years, right? And you're still kind of sort of hybrid-ish.
Hybrid, yeah. So I did, as soon as the office reopened in the summer of 2020, I started coming back once or twice a week because I just couldn't stand to be alone in my house anymore all the time.
Plus, you have one of the best views in the state.
I do have an excellent view.
Yeah.
Yes, it is a real perk.
Yeah.
For those who don't know, my view looks north from the highest skyscraper in Indianapolis up the Indianapolis Mall, which is just a fabulous view.
Yeah.
Right now, all the flowering trees are flowering. It's like my favorite time.
Oh, it's funny. Did you know, I didn't know this until recently, Indianapolis has the second most monuments per capita of any city in the country outside of Washington, D.C.
I didn't know that, but I'm not surprised.
Because you can see like 4 of them from your office.
Yes.
When people hear Indianapolis Mall, they probably think you mean like department stores. No, this is like the Washington Mall.
It is modeled. So the Indianapolis street plan is modeled on Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
and also the mall, although it is not as grand as the Capitol Mall. Yeah. It is modeled on that.
So another fun fact, I told you yesterday when we were having drinks that I'm a bit of a architecture snob and urban planning snob. The planner who laid out Washington, D.C., his apprentice is the one who laid out Indianapolis, which is why we have the diagonals. It's why we have the mall. It's why we have all these things, all the monuments, all the things that are there are here in the capital. We are also a capital of flyover country,
Yeah, a lot of people, sometimes people ask me, why is Indianapolis the capital? And it's like, well, after statehood, they looked at the map and they took a pin and they put it in the direct center of the state.
Yeah. There
was nothing here. There was no town. There were some farms. That was it. And they said, geographically, we want to serve the whole state, center of the state. Yes, and that's how Indianapolis started.
It was very like a democratic, philosophical, kind of romantic ideal that took hold after years and years of draining swamps and clearing forests.
There weren't that many swamps around here, but they did clear some forests.
Yeah. All right, good stuff. So when you are not on the clock now and you're not watching movies, how are you feeling your time? Are you traveling again yet? Are you,
little bit. I haven't flown since the lockdown started, but I have taken a few driving trips. Just I like Chicago. I've been up to Chicago a couple times, and I a few weeks ago I took just semi-spontaneous driving trip in southern Indiana, and I just went down to the southwestern. That's the toe, of Indiana.
Yeah, Indiana's a boot.
Toe.
It's in the toe.
So the Ohio River is the southern border, so it's very, it's like that. And I went to the very farthest point, and I stood on an overlook where the Ohio meets the Wabash, and I looked at Kentucky and I looked at Illinois while I was standing in Indiana. It was very cool.
Have you been to New Harmony before?
On this trip. I went through.
What was it like? I've never been. So, and maybe give a little bit of background.
So there's one restaurant. So I ate there. There's some interesting architecture there. There's probably in the summer, there's more to do. In the spring. So originally I was just going to go to New Harmony. And after 2 hours, I had completely exhausted walking around the town. And so I got out the atlas and I said, I could go to the toe of Indiana. So that was actually spontaneous.
I love that you also got out an atlas instead of pulling out an app or a smartphone or something. Rand McNally, long live. Yeah.
Don't try and take my atlas, when I lose cell service down there in southern Indiana, my atlas still works.
Yeah, that's true. So I've never been to New Harmony, but how much remains. So back in the 1800s, there was this move, especially among Midwestern, I guess you'd call them Unitarians, right? Kind of an offshoot even of mainstream Protestantism.
Not this particular group. So this was a group of utopianists.
Okay.
So there were two sequential foundings of New Harmony. So the first group was a personality-led Protestant offshoot from Pennsylvania that came over to build their idyllic town. They built the town, and then for some reason I don't know, went back to Pennsylvania after 10 years. So then they sold the entire town to a group of utopianists.
It's like a 19th century version of Schitt's Creek. You obviously haven't seen the show. Oh, that's so sad. Okay. All right.
I'm a movie person, not a TV person. Yeah. Yeah. So then the utopianists moved in, and they only lasted 2 years before they fell apart due to interpersonal conflicts and a lack of practical know-how.
Yeah. Yeah. The history course that I took, the text was like, it was a bunch of people moving to a rural area, and none of them were blacksmiths, and none of them were farmers, and none of them, I'm like, what were they thinking? Who signed off? You know what? It'll be a good idea. Let's just all go. Let's figure it out. It'll be fun.
But the town's still there. And it is interesting to walk around in, but don't plan to spend a whole weekend there.
Yeah, no, probably good advice. I like that. That's good. Okay. So the way we usually wrap the episodes, and I definitely didn't prep you for this, so mea culpa.
Okay.
Is I usually try to give people just to, tee them up and say, hey, what's something in the industry right now that you think deserves attention or praise or constructive criticism, or just, cast a light in something that's been rumbling around in your brain.
So one good thing that has come out of the disruption of the last 2 years has been a really increased focus on professional development and mentoring and education within the legal sector and e-discovery in particular. And I think that's very positive. I've been interested in that for a long time, and seeing that just really explosion of interest and enthusiasm and that recognition that hit when we all got locked into our own little spaces, literally our own physical spaces, that we needed to foster connections in a new way, strengthen our existing connections and form new connections and learn a new way of connecting without sacrificing the old way. And I've seen a lot of good things coming out of that. And I'm seeing a lot of good initiatives to bring people together. And it's like, yes, we work for competitors, whether it's the law firm or the provider side, or maybe we're marketing to each other, but that's secondary. And what's primary is we're a mobile workforce. We all want to we're moving around all the time. And most important, we want to make e-discovery better by collaborating and helping each other to do a better job.
Any specific resources that you found to be particularly helpful or well done? Or
I don't know. There's so much specifics. Some of the established groups, are doing a good job like they always have. I'm involved in a small way with ACEDS and EDRM and some of the other groups, just attending events and writing for the blogs and things like that. And so I see the groups that were doing a good job before continuing to do that, but it's more just the renewed spirit of this is important and we all want to pitch in and do it together. And I've been very happy to see that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it's going to continue.
I think so too. And especially as now these things are opening up and we are getting back together again, right? It's funny to see like everybody on LinkedIn after Legal Week, right? Or there was an ACEDS event recently, Legal Value Network I saw, and everybody is so funny because they're all capitalizing we were able to get together in person. It's like, yeah, it's a thing. Humans don't want to meet other humans they're not related to. It's really great.
Yes. I haven't had that yet, except in a small way. I'm very involved in the Indianapolis Bar Association. I had the e-discovery section here, and I've been an active member for ever since it started. And we're doing things in person together again. So we had our e-discovery day event in December, and there were only 25 people there, but it was so wonderful. And everyone was so happy. And I was worried that our sponsors would be disappointed. And they're like, no, I haven't seen anyone for 2 years. It's like, this is great.
Yeah. So that's what's funny, right? So, Ray and Sean, partners in Discovery Master and Proteus, were co-founders of that section. And so, what's funny is, right, that I started March of 2020 working for them. And because I focused most of my time on Discovery Master,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know anybody in the indie legal community except for you and my employers,
Right.
because I've got clients and prospects all over the planet.
Mhm.
And so being at that event, it's like, oh, wow, I've been in this community, literally in this physical community, to say nothing of the industry community, for 2 years.
Mhm.
And it's like I felt like I was like walking into a family reunion. Like there was like literally
Yes.
hugs and like secret handshakes. It felt like, man, I got some boning up to do in my own backyard here. This is
Yeah.
quite a thing.
Mhm.
So too funny. Well, thank you so much for coming on. This was a pleasure. And next time
Yes.
we'll go to Germany and we'll get the Riesling right out of the cellar.
I
And
like,
we'll make it happen.
I could be persuaded.
Yeah. Hey, cheers.
Cheers.